As David is locked away at a notorious LA jail awaiting trial, what exactly is his life like? Is he in danger? How does he adjust to this new reality? Does his celebrity status affect anything? We have new reporting on the details of his life behind bars, and we are bringing on a prison expert to tell us what may be happening inside those walls. From the moment he wakes up to the last check of the night, we're going to talk about it right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. What is David's life behind bars right now? What is it like for him? Well, we got some details that I want to talk about. That's what I want to examine for the 21-year-old as he awaits a potential trial on charges of first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a minor, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, all in connection with the alleged killing and dismemberment of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Oh, and by the way, if you want more details of the David case, including the transcripts, the filings, it is all on the Law&Crime Plus app. It's under the case files. We have one for David. You can check it all out there. Now, with the singer's arraignment scheduled for later this month, as a judge just held that there is enough evidence for him to go to trial, he is being held at the Twin Towers Correctional Facility out in Los Angeles. He's been there since his arrest in April. The LA Sheriff's Office calls this facility, quote, the world's largest jail, as well as the nation's largest mental health facility. The facility is located at 450 Botchett Street in Los Angeles, California, and is operated by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Now, friend of the show, Steve Fisher, who is a private investigator, he's been looking into Celeste's death since the beginning of this. He went on X recently and he posted, quote, this is David's view tonight at Men's Central Jail in LA County. This is as good as it will ever get for him. I hope every minute feels like a year. Hashtag Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And he says these are actual Men's Central Jail photos, and he attaches photos of what he claims to be a cell and a block that look absolutely horrendous. Now, let me just tell you something about this facility. So, according to the LA Times earlier this year, Los Angeles County Sheriff Robert Luna requested that the National Institute of Corrections, this federal department, conduct a full review of Los Angeles jails because apparently this came after 10 inmates died in custody in less than 3 months. Back in September of last year, California Attorney General Rob Bonta apparently sued the Sheriff's Department, alleging unsafe and unconstitutional conditions at county jails. At the time, Bonta said, let me be clear, this is about human dignity. These conditions aren't new. So with that in mind, we have learned some reported details about David's life behind bars, and that's what I want to get into. And as we do that, let me bring on Dr. DeWayne Hendrix, retired senior warden with the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons. So good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Jesse.
What do you know about this Twin Towers Correctional Facility? What can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that it was built sometime in the mid-90s after the earthquake, the major earthquake they had in the LA area in Northridge back in 94. The prior facility had some damage there in Los Angeles County. So they built this facility to accommodate, I believe it's about 1,100,000 something, a little over 1 million square feet of space. And it's designed for, better accommodations for mental health care, and also to house individuals who are going to be in what we would call special housing. I know some would say solitary confinement, but to accommodate individuals who will probably be single-celled for quite a bit of time while they're going through their pretrial cases in that process.
How bad are the conditions?
Again, from my understanding, as compared to the traditional LA County jail, it's supposed to be a lot better, although they may have staffing difficulties like other facilities, but from my understanding, they have better food accommodations for those individuals housed there. And I can tell you throughout the years, individuals that are celebrities or high profile cases, they normally send those folks over to the Twin Towers versus having them at the traditional LA County jail.
Can you talk about that for a second? And generally speaking, also there, for a celebrity, for a high profile individual, how is their experience different from someone else? Are they treated differently? Is there a target on their back? Is there more security measures put in place for them? How does it work?
Well, it's not necessarily that just because they're a celebrity, they want to keep them away. But typically, their initial experience is just like any other. They'll be arrested wherever they are, and depending on how that arrest goes, in terms of if they go quietly or without incident, they'll be taken there. They'll be booked. They'll be photographed, fingerprinted. Obviously, they'll go through a total body visual search, and then they'll be placed in, especially if they're a celebrity or someone that may be suicidal or something like that, they're going to place them in, special housing, so to speak. Now, in terms of why they would house him initially in, segregation or special housing instead of putting him in a general population unit initially, and that is because of the celebrity. You don't want a person that necessarily have a target on their back once they get there, because people may try to harm them or extort them initially. Or it could be if they're suicidal, if there's some sort of suicidal ideation. So that will be typically why a celebrity or someone high profile would be placed in segregation initially.
Okay, so before we jump back into this, I know this is a little bit of a 180, but I just have to call this out. Do you dread calling to make a doctor's appointment like I do? I mean, I just did it. It is such a hassle. It is so easy to procrastinate, either because of phone anxiety or having to play phone tag, wait for callbacks. You know what it's like. Well, our sponsor, ZocDoc, makes it all so much easier. ZocDoc's free app and website lets you search and compare local in-network doctors, which means you can make an appointment without an anxiety-inducing phone call. They also have more than 150,000 providers within more than 200 specialties all across 50 states. I mean, look how simple it is to just pick a doctor with ZocDoc. Real patient reviews, detailed doctor profiles. It takes all the guesswork out, leaving everyone anxiety-free. Your health matters. Taking care of yourself shouldn't be complicated. Find and book the right doctor with ZocDoc. Head on over to ZocDoc.com/Jesse to get started today and check that appointment off your to-do list. That is ZocDoc.com/Jesse. What about somebody who's accused of sexually abusing and murdering a child? Are they treated differently by the inmates?
Yes. And I can tell you with my experience at MDC Brooklyn, we had over 2 million square feet there. So we were actually able to house people who were charged or had allegations of sexual abuse, child abuse, that kind of thing. We would put them in a particular unit with them only. And sometimes would house ex-cops or, public officials who also may have targets on their back. We would put them in that particular housing unit. So yes, you would, especially someone who is high profile, the nature of the particular crime that we're talking about here, having some 14-year-old young lady brutally murdered at the hands of, a singer or someone who is a public figure, obviously, one, he would have a target on his back for the sex crime itself. And then, being a sex offender, a murdering of a young lady, and then being a celebrity, you automatically would want to put him in there. At least initially, you would want to house him by himself in segregation.
And we're getting into his specifics of his housing in a minute. And to be clear, he is innocent unless proven guilty. He hasn't been convicted of anything. So as he's fighting these allegations and denying these allegations, I mean, the inmates won't care. I mean, the allegations are the allegations. Before we even get into something else about this, I am wondering, is it the opposite effect too? And I was kind of seeing this in the Diddy case, where people could be enamored by a celebrity inside and may want to protect them, befriend them, have an allegiance to them, be loyal to them. You tell me how that works.
Well, everything is about leverage. And when you're talking about being confined in a space, whether it's a housing unit, whether it's a cell, individuals who are locked behind bars, especially those who what we call indigent, people that don't have a lot of funds or who don't have influence or power, what they're trying to do is get leverage. And any person is kind of like, you go into a schoolyard, the new kid is going to get picked on, a new kid is going to get tested, right? So in a sense of someone like the person we're talking about, he's new, he walked on that unit, And of course, people are going to try to figure him out. And again, is there something that they can get from him, whether it's money, whether it's access to legal assistance? Because again, a lot of inmates, when they come into prison, a lot of them don't have anything. So they have to use, either physical force, mental force, or whatever leverage they have, whether in gangs or anything like that, to try to level themselves up. Because once you owe someone a favor, and if I owe X person over here, and then you got this new guy coming in, if I can befriend them, if I can connect with them, and now I can pay back my favor to this other person that I owe, so that we can kind of control what's going on in the environment. So that's how typically that happens.
So I want to go into a little bit about what his life seems to be like. People magazine reported on some of these apparent details of David's life, like how he's in a single jail cell, which you mentioned, constantly monitored, that this is reportedly a place where a source told people the inmates, and you mentioned this too, housed there have mental health needs, that they're kept apart from other inmates. You look at his schedule, so that he's apparently, according to this reporting, housed in Tower 1, Section 142. Again, these single cells separated from others, 24-hour monitoring. He can leave his cell for limited periods of movement, but he has to be monitored, usually by a sheriff's sergeant with a body-worn camera. What is that life like? What is that experience like? Like, what does his day-to-day look like?
Well, I mean, when he's not going to court, or let's just say if he's going for a hearing, they'll wake him up about 4 or 5 a.m., get him a cold, continental type breakfast, get him taken down to the booking area to where they're going to transport him over to the courthouse. He'll spend the day there and then he'll come back. But if he's there on the housing unit, they'll wake him up for breakfast. And then if he doesn't have a shower in his cell, every 3 days, they will escort him out for a shower. And again, what we would call that 3-man hold in the federal system. So you'd have 2 staff members there and a supervisor. In this case, would be a sergeant. We would have a lieutenant, and then we would escort this high-profile person out, whether it's high-profile based on their celebrity, their crime, or if they're may cause physical harm to the staff. And then we would, anytime that person moved, whether it's to talk on the phone, whether it's to go to recreation, whether it's go to court, or whether it was to come out to talk to law enforcement or talk to his attorney or what visitation, they're going to move with someone. And typically you'll get recreation five days out of the week. He'll get the shower out, 3 days outside of the cell. And depending on, and then the commissary and all that kind of stuff, if he has money on his books, they would bring that to him. But he would spend the vast majority of his time in that single cell, but staff will be, other than them escorting him every 15 to 30 minutes, you're going to have staff making rounds to do a welfare check. You're going to have health services staff coming to see him. You're going to have mental health clinicians. They're going to be coming by to see him on a day-to-day basis. His counselors, case managers, other officials. So he'll be seen and he'll talk to staff most of the time, but most of his time will actually be spent behind that cell.
And what does he do in the cell? What can he do in the cell?
Well, he can have his toiletries. He can have limited, I'm assuming he's probably given a limited amount of commissary. He'll have access to some of his legal materials. He can have writing utensils, pens, pads, and that thing. But it'll be a pen that, one of these rubber type pens. It won't be anything that he can turn into what we call a shank to harm someone or harm himself. And any medical equipment that he may need, his medications, if he's on any medications, if he has sleep apnea, he'd have that machine in there in the cell, 1 or 2 blankets, a sheet, a pillow, very limited amount of property that he would have in there. And then staff should be shaking down or doing cell searches when they move him out to court or to recreation to make sure that he's not, creating any shanks or what we call homemade knives or anything like that to try to harm himself or someone else.
Let's talk about the food. So reportedly, according to people, he eats 3 meals a day. That law enforcement sources say that breakfast is served around 6 a.m., lunch between 10:30 and 11 a.m., dinner at around 5 p.m., It feels like the day is centered around the meals. Like it seems to be those would be the big events that you look out for and you wait for. And what is the food actually like, generally speaking? I don't know if you know what the menu is. Like people reported that the Twin Towers facility might have a better menu, but I don't know. I mean, what is he typically looking like he's eating?
Probably in the mornings and the lunchtime, it'll probably be more cold foods. Like, for breakfast, it'll be like cereal, milk, maybe some fruit or some sort of breakfast cake or some sort of pastry. And then lunchtime, again, probably some cold cuts. Now, I don't know what type of diet he's on. Some people, inmates come in with religious diets or, they don't want to eat flesh or that kind of thing. So, let's say if he doesn't eat flesh, they'll probably give him a peanut butter sandwich or some crackers or something like that, or a sandwich if he does eat flesh. And then your dinner meal is probably going to be your one warm meal for the day. And I can tell you, most jails and have standards through the American Corrections Association. So they'll typically have like a hamburger day, chicken day, fish, spaghetti, school pizza, like I was served, in public schools in California, so there's little square little pizzas that they would give out. So it would be something sort of that nature, and it will be balanced to make sure that, he's getting a healthy diet. Of course, based on the amount of people they're serving there, obviously the taste and the quality is probably not going to be as good as you would get at home or maybe in a high-end restaurant like he may be used to, but it will be edible enough because the staff there, at least some of the administrative staff there, should be testing and tasting those meals each and every day to make sure if they could eat it, then it can be served to the population.
How does someone mental adjust to this new reality? He's a celebrity, he's young too. And all of a sudden, he's arrested, he's taken to this facility. Everything that he's known has changed, his whole lifestyle changed. He's in a different environment. Typically speaking, how do people mentally, physically adjust to this new reality and environment?
Well, and again, it depends on the circumstances of the individual, just understanding who he is. I mean, from all reports, he's never been arrested before. He come from a two-parent home. He grew up singing in church, and then he became, creative in his music. But in terms of being locked up in solitary confinement or special housing immediately, I'm sure, and I know the case, there were allegations well before they were arresting him. So he probably had a little bit of time to think about, okay, what is this going to be like, if I am arrested for these allegations? So I'm almost certain that the medical and the mental clinical staff are spending a lot of time with him to make sure if he's having a difficult time adjusting to being in solitary confinement. And then the charges that he's facing as well are very heavy. So I would think that, any signs of, suicidal ideation or self-harm or harming others will be taken very seriously, because it don't take very long to be behind a cell, for one, even if the door opens every hour or every other hour during the day. I'm sure it's taken a very strong mental toll on him after the last several months that he's been incarcerated.
I thought this was notable. Apparently, he has no infractions, no issues. You couple that with reports he's been cooperative during the preliminary process. What does that tell you?
Well, just doing a little additional background information on him. Apparently, he's sort of been reported as an introvert, someone who would be creative in his sister's closet, I would believe. I hope I'm saying this correctly, where he'd be writing his songs and different things of that nature. So I'm not surprised by hearing that he is very calm, collected, isn't causing any problems or concerns for staff. But I also would like to say, I'm sure his legal team is probably telling him to lean in to being calm, collected, because the last thing you want is reports of being, misbehaving, disrespecting staff, assaulting staff, or anything like that, or making waves. And also find it interesting that I've been hearing that his family is supporting him, but he hasn't had any visits, any in-person visits since he's been incarcerated. So I'm not sure exactly what to read into that. But
Yeah, no visitors, no visitors. That's what's being reported.
Right. And over time, to have that human connection, especially for the people who love you, even though these allegations are out there, I know that's going to be something that's very important as he goes through this process. So I think time will tell, especially if he does not if he continues to not get any family visits and have any connections with those who love him and those who he loved the most. Eventually, I believe that will take a toll on his behavior. But I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure his legal team are probably telling him, look, you need to stay cool, you need to stay calm and follow the rules, because while we're going through this process, the last thing you want, you're already facing serious charges. The last thing you need is for this information to be brought into the courtroom, especially if he is found guilty or if he takes a plea deal, because obviously he'll be sentenced at some point if these allegations are found to be true and if he is found guilty by a jury of his peers.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned, him going to court for the preliminary hearing. Does that help inmates break up the monotony of the day-to-day? And the way I looked at it recently, I was thinking about Brian Kohberger, who has been convicted, right? And he pled guilty. Now he's trying to withdraw the guilty plea, try to fight this, try to get a new trial. In a way, it's like, what does he have to lose? Does that give him something to do? Does going back and forth to court, appearing in that courtroom, hearing the testimony, seeing people, does that just break up the monotony for them? Do they enjoy it? Is it exciting for them?
I think it does it definitely breaks the monotony, especially, and I'm not sure how far the Twin Towers is from the courthouse. So again, being able to get outside of the jail, even though you're in a secure van or a secure vehicle, over to the courthouse, even in that 10, 15, 30-minute car ride, and I'm sure they're in some LA traffic out there. Probably, and then he's probably, and I'm not sure if he's engaging with staff and conversations and things of that nature. And then also it would depend on the situation at the courthouse. So let's just say, he's sitting in a tank with 10 other people, which I doubt, because if they're keeping him separated at the jail, I'm sure he's in a single cell at the courthouse. So I would believe just being able to get out, because I can tell you, it's been my experience for inmates who would get a chance to go to the hospital if they had any issues, medical concerns. They would love to spend the night in the hospital for a few days, just to be able to see people from outside the facility, even though they're handcuffed to the bed, so to speak. But it just gives them a chance to just get away from the environment just for a short period of time.
Okay. Wow, it's fascinating to hear this. He's innocent unless proven guilty, but this is his reality as of right now until he goes to trial and sorts this out. So, Dr. DeWayne Hendrix, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving us some perspective. Really appreciate it. It is just another aspect to what is a truly, truly sordid and disturbing case. Thanks for taking the time.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.